Chosen one. Stop where you are and listen. The air around you feels different because heaven has turned its attention toward your obedience. You didn't follow the crowd, you followed conviction. You didn't chase applause, you followed the whisper of God. While others asked for proof, you walked by faith. Heaven saw it all. There were nights when you asked if it was worth it. You obeyed. And yet, the doors stayed closed. You waited. And yet, silence answered back. You were tempted to turn around, to settle for average. But something sacred kept you moving forward. That was the Spirit, marking you for what's about to unfold. When others laughed, you stayed faithful. When others quit, you kept building. You didn't realize it, but every act of obedience was a brick in the foundation of your future. You were constructing something eternal while others were chasing temporary comfort. And now, the structure is ready to be funded by heaven itself. Picture this, a river hidden beneath the desert. For years, it runs unseen, carving its path under dry soil. Then one day, it bursts through the ground. Unstoppable. That's your obedience. Chosen one. Hidden. Patient. But powerful. It's about to break through, flooding your life with divine provision. The Word of God declares in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28, verse 12, "The Lord will open the heavens, the storehouse of His bounty, to send rain in season, and bless all the work of your hands." Do you feel that promise settling into your spirit? Heaven is opening its storehouse, not because you begged, but because you obeyed. Rain is coming, not as a storm of chaos, but as a downpour of resources, relationships, and rest. Let me tell you about a woman named Arya, a quiet, unseen, chosen one. She once left a stable job to start a small foundation, feeding children in her community. Everyone told her it was foolish. She had no sponsors, no connections, only a conviction burning inside her. For months, she struggled, counting coins, praying for provision, but she never stopped. She obeyed when logic said, "Quit." One morning, she received an unexpected email. A business owner she'd never met had heard about her work through someone's casual conversation at a cafe. That same week, he funded her entire project and offered ongoing support. Arya didn't chase it. It had chased her. Because obedience carries its own magnetism, it attracts divine supply. Chosen one. That same magnetism surrounds you now. God is stirring hearts, aligning timing, and opening unseen vaults with your name written on them. You've been asking, "When?" "Lord," heaven replies, "Now." Then, every seed you planted in faith, every tithe, every helping hand, every silent yes is compounding. Divine interest is accruing on your obedience. Heaven doesn't forget what you did when no one was watching. You are stepping into a funded life, not by luck, but by law, the spiritual law of obedience. This isn't prosperity hype. This is divine order. When you obey, God provides the currency of destiny, peace that funds your mind, favor that funds your vision, strength that funds your walk. You won't have to manipulate anything. Heaven is already endorsing you. So, as this message finds you, let your heart receive not just the words, but the confirmation you are not overlooked. You are about to live proof that obedience still moves the hand of God. Before this section ends, take a symbolic step of faith. Type 555 inches. The comments it represents divine release and alignment. Like this message to mark your agreement. Share it, so another chosen one remembers why they said yes. And subscribe, so you don't miss what heaven unfolds next. You obeyed when they didn't. Now heaven funds what your obedience began. Chosen one. The shift has already begun. What once drained you will now sustain you. The same fields where you sowed in tears will soon overflow in laughter. This is your evidence season, the manifestation of what obedience quietly built in the dark. Heaven is releasing your proof. You won't need to chase recognition. It will find you. Doors that ignored your knock will swing open before you even arrive. Your name is being spoken in rooms you've never entered. Stay humble. Stay ready. Heaven funds not pride, but purpose born in surrender. This is your confirmation. The drought is over. Divine deposits are being made into every area that once lacked life. Your yes unlocked the storehouse of heaven. And now, abundance flows in rhythm with your faith. Lift your hands, receive what's already yours. You didn't just obey, you endured. Obedience wasn't a single moment, it became a lifestyle. And for that, heaven calls you tested and proven. You walked through the silent seasons where prayers echoed back with no reply. You carried instructions that made no sense, carrying faith like a candle in a windstorm. Every step cost you something. Friends who didn't understand, opportunities you had to decline, comfort you had to surrender. We find in the book of Job, chapter 23, verse 10, "But he knows the way that I take. When he has tested me, I shall come forth as gold." That verse isn't just ancient poetry, it's your reflection. You have walked through the fire, and heaven watched how you handled the heat. You didn't melt, you were refined. The pressure wasn't punishment, it was purification. Gold doesn't fear fire because it knows what emerges is purer than what entered. So it was with you. There was a time when you thought obedience meant instant reward. Yet instead you met silence. But the silence was not absence, it was strategy. God was teaching you to hear him without noise, to trust without confirmation. He was stripping away your dependency on validation, preparing you to recognize his voice alone. You remember those nights, don't you? When you prayed and felt nothing. When you served faithfully and saw no fruit. That was your hidden classroom. Heaven doesn't give gold without a furnace. You were never being ignored. You were being measured. Think of Elijah at the brook Cherith. He obeyed and went where God told him, only to watch the brook dry up. What a paradox to obey and still experience drought. But it was there, in that place of apparent lack, that Elijah learned the rhythm of trust. He discovered that obedience isn't proven in overflow, but in emptiness. You learned the same lesson. When everything dried up, you stayed. You didn't run. You didn't manipulate outcomes. You remained faithful. That is the mark of the chosen. In your hidden seasons, heaven wasn't silent, it was sculpting. You were clay on the wheel of the potter. Each spin, each press of his hand, shaped something divine within you. The potter doesn't shape glass, he shapes vessels strong enough to carry living water. And that is what you are becoming, a carrier of divine purpose. One story echoes your journey. A young man named Caleb once left everything familiar to start over in obedience. He gave up a promotion that everyone else wanted, simply because he felt God whisper, "Not this time." The months that followed were brutal. No income, no recognition, just faith. He kept showing up, praying, writing, planning in the dark. 2 years later, a door opened, not the one he wanted, but one far greater. The company that overlooked him before later hired him as a partner in a new venture. Caleb didn't chase the door returned to find him. That's what obedience does. It delays, refines, then multiplies. You have been in that refining stage, and heaven now declares, you are ready. In the world's eyes, you were forgotten, but in God's eyes, you were hidden for protection. You weren't buried, you were planted, and the soil that covered you was the very substance that preserved you. When others were rushing ahead, you were being rooted. Deep roots make tall trees. Now, as light begins to pierce your horizon, you'll understand why it took so long. Every delay was divine editing. God wasn't denying you, He was developing you. If He had released certain blessings before your foundation was stable, the weight of success would have crushed your soul. But now, you can handle it. You have the strength of silence, the wisdom of waiting, and the humility of endurance. Chosen one. Heaven trusted you with loneliness, and you didn't curse it. You let it refine your motives. You no longer obey for outcomes. You obey because you love the one who called you. That's maturity. That's gold. Your life now carries a fragrance that only comes from fire, a scent the spiritual realm recognizes. Darkness knows your endurance, and heaven honors it. Every tear you cried became oil for your anointing. Every loss became a deposit into your spiritual account. So if you still feel the ashes around you, don't despair. Gold doesn't stay hidden forever. The heat always gives way to shine. Soon, what was private will become public proof that obedience pays in divine timing. You are not at the end of your test. You are at the unveiling of your reward. The silence was never punishment. It was polishing. Heaven is about to display what endurance has produced in you. You are gold. Chosen one, tested, refined, and ready. When you obeyed, others hesitated. They calculated the risk while you trusted the voice. You stepped forward without a map. And now, the difference between you and them is not luck. It's loyalty. You chose the narrow path, and heaven never forgets those who choose obedience over approval. You remember the crossroads clearly. God whispered, "Go." But every logical reason said, "Stay." It felt foolish to others, but you obeyed anyway. You didn't know it then, but that moment separated you from the ordinary. Obedience always costs more than convenience, yet it also pays more than effort ever could. There's a hidden law in the kingdom. What others refuse to do becomes the inheritance of those who obey. That's why your life is shifting. Heaven is redistributing assignments, transferring opportunities, and placing divine funding into the hands of the faithful. It's not favoritism, it's fulfillment of divine principle. According to what is revealed in the book of Proverbs, chapter 13, verse 22, a good person leaves an inheritance for their children's children's, but a sinner's wealth is stored up for the righteous. And you may not have seen it yet, but something is being transferred in your favor. The wealth of ideas, influence, and open doors that others mishandled is now shifting toward your name. Not because you demanded it, but because you stayed consistent when others didn't. Obedience qualifies you for inheritance. There's a story about a young man named Nathan. He was part of a business team that received a bold instruction from God to give away the first profits of their company to fund a local shelter. Everyone else refused, fearing loss. But Nathan obeyed quietly, giving his own portion in faith. Months later, the company faced sudden crisis. Contracts cancelled, investors withdrew, but Nathan was protected. A new client approached him directly and funded his personal startup. The same obedience that cost him once became the key to his breakthrough. That's how heaven works. When others hesitate, your obedience positions you to receive what they rejected. You don't have to compete. You simply have to comply with God's timing. Obedience is not performance, it's partnership. Think about this. When Noah built the ark, the world mocked him. When Abraham left his home, no one understood him. When Esther stepped before the king, the law forbade her. Yet every act of obedience rewrote history. You are standing in that same lineage, the ones who obeyed when logic said no. You might not see the full picture yet, but heaven's pattern is repeating. The places where others disobeyed, God will raise you up to restore. You'll rebuild what they abandoned. You'll finish what they feared to start. That's the divine exchange. Obedience redeems lost ground, and as this happens, stay grounded. Don't compare. Don't boast. Obedience isn't a trophy to display, it's a mantle to carry. The same humility that guided you through the valley will sustain you on the mountain. God funds purpose, not pride. Your obedience terrifies darkness because it cannot predict someone who moves by faith. Hell expects you to fold when the reward delays. Yet, here you are, still standing, still trusting, still becoming. Heaven smiles when you move without proof, because that's when true faith speaks louder than fear. Now pause and look back for a moment. Every no you gave to temptation was a yes to destiny. Every delay you endured without quitting was recorded as interest in heaven's ledger. You haven't been forgotten, you've been reserved for such a time as this. If your spirit feels this confirmation, anchor it now. Comment, still obeying. That simple declaration is more than words, it's alignment. It tells heaven, you're not waiting for proof, you're walking in faith. It tells darkness that obedience is your language, not compromise. And it reminds your own soul that you didn't come this far to stop now. So hold steady. What others lost through rebellion, you'll gain through faithfulness. The harvest of obedience doesn't just bless you, it restores generations. You obeyed when they didn't. And now, heaven's funding continues to flow toward you, unshakable, indéniable, unstoppable. You are standing in the quiet aftermath of obedience, and heaven is moving pieces you cannot see. The shift may seem invisible, but it's real contracts forming, hearts softening, provision aligning. The silence after obedience is never empty. It's the sound of divine rearrangement in motion. Every moment of surrender is now gathering interest. God doesn't forget the faithful. The blessings delayed are not denied, they're simply being multiplied to meet the maturity of your spirit. When you receive, it won't just sustain you, it will overflow into others. So remain steady. You are not waiting anymore, you are becoming. Your obedience has built a legacy, and now heaven funds it to completion. Keep walking. Chosen one, your yes still echoes. Your quiet obedience became sound in the spirit realm. Every yes you whispered while trembling echoed through eternity. The world may have overlooked it, but heaven amplified it. That is how the unseen operates. It listens not to noise, but to faith. What others dismissed as small acts, heaven recorded as monumental faith transactions. You didn't realize it, but every time you chose patience over panic, you were speaking heaven's language. Every time you prayed instead of complaining, you were opening invisible gates. The world measures outcomes, God measures obedience. And while others rushed to build platforms, you were building altars. There's something sacred about silent obedience. It doesn't seek validation, it seeks alignment. And though it feels unnoticed, it's never unrewarded. Heaven's justice doesn't forget. There are spiritual laws set in motion by unseen acts, and those laws are now circling back with reward. As was spoken in the sacred texts of old, in the book of Psalms, chapter 126, verse 5, those who sow with tears will reap with songs of joy. You sowed with tears, didn't you? You gave when it hurt. You forgave when it was undeserved. You pressed forward when your strength was gone. And heaven didn't just watch it counted. Every tear was a seed. Every heartbreak was a deposit. Your harvest was never lost. It was simply maturing. Think about the farmer. When he places seeds in the ground, he doesn't cry because he's losing them. He knows they must be buried to bear fruit. You too were buried in seasons of uncertainty. The soil of isolation covered your purpose, and the world thought you had disappeared. But what they called disappearance, God called development. There was a woman named Leora, quiet but bold in faith. For years, she cared for her aging mother, postponing her own dreams. No one praised her sacrifice. She felt forgotten, unseen, and tired. Yet she kept obeying, loving, giving, and trusting that somehow it mattered. After her mother passed, doors began to open. A scholarship for nursing, a foundation funding hair studies, opportunities she never applied for. Leora learned what heaven always intended. You never lose when you obey. You simply sow. You too are entering your reaping season. The ground that once held your pain now holds your promise. The tears that fell in secret have watered something holy. What felt like an ending was actually a planting. The roots have spread deep beneath your feet. And now, shoots of new life are breaking through. The silence that once frustrated you was God's way of strengthening your spiritual muscles. Without resistance, growth remains weak. But now, you've developed endurance, discernment, and peace. You no longer chase validation. You walk in quiet authority. That's the maturity obedience births. There's something profound about coming forth from testing. You start to see how every no, every delay, and every unanswered prayer was weaving divine precision. You understand that obedience was never about control. It was about trust. Trust that God's plan, though hidden, was always holy. You've likely noticed that since you obeyed, some people faded from your life. Don't mourn them. Heaven orchestrated that separation. Obedience exposes what can't walk with you into the next season. Some were only assigned to your waiting room, not your destiny. And while the world chases immediate gratification, you've learned the deeper rhythm. Obedience may look slow, but it builds forever things. You now understand that divine timing isn't delay, it's preparation, meeting, purpose. The longer the preparation, the greater the unveiling. Even your scars are now sacred. They tell the story of battles fought in silence, of victories unseen by human eyes, but witnessed by heaven. You didn't just survive, you were sanctified. The fire didn't consume you, it consecrated you. And now, the atmosphere of your life carries a different tone. You move differently, not out of pride, but peace. You no longer need to prove your obedience. Your fruit will speak for itself. The doors that once resisted you will now open, not because you knock louder, but because your obedience holds authority in heaven's registry. Chosen one. Let this truth settle deeply. Your silent yes was louder than any public performance. God measures faith not by words, but by endurance. You've endured the waiting, and now the promise breathes near. The sound of your obedience continues to echo, summoning provision, purpose, and fulfillment to your path. So, rest. You are no longer striving to be seen. You are being revealed. Heaven's echo of your obedience is now returning as tangible evidence, proof that faith never fails, and obedience never ends in emptiness. The divine ledger is opening, and heaven is balancing what was sown in faith. There comes a moment when every yes whispered in private becomes visible in public, when the invisible exchange between obedience and reward reaches full maturity. You are living in that moment now. For a long time, you walked through unseen seasons. You didn't chase applause, you carried purpose. You gave when it hurt, prayed when it was dry, and served when it seemed unseen. But here's the truth: heaven never loses count. Every seed planted in faith is recorded in divine memory. According to what is written in the book of Galatians, chapter 6, verse 9, let us not grow weary in doing good, for in due season we shall reap if we do not give up. I do. That verse is more than comfort, it's confirmation. Your due season is here. The fruit of your endurance is ripening before your eyes. You may not see the full harvest yet, but you can feel it in your spirit, the air shifting, the doors unlocking, the opportunities stirring. Think of a sunrise. It begins quietly, without noise or rush. Slowly, the horizon softens, and light begins to touch the earth. That's how God funds His chosen ones, softly, steadily, faithfully. No explosions of grandeur, just a continual unfolding of favor that feels natural yet undeniable. There's something beautiful about divine timing. It always meets you when you've matured enough to handle it. God is not just funding your needs, He's funding your purpose. When heaven invests, it's never random, it's relational. You've shown Him that obedience is your currency, and now He responds with provision as His signature. You see, this message, this voice that has walked with you through silence, storms, and revelation exists for one purpose: to awaken the chosen ones and remind them who they are. And every video, every message, every word you've received here was built with prayer, sacrifice, and faith. Nothing is automated. Everything is an offering. That's why, when you like, share, or subscribe, it's not about numbers, it's about connection. You're not pressing a button, you're lighting another torch along the path. Each action spreads illumination to someone still walking in the dark. One click can become a candle. One share can become sunrise for another soul. And if ever your heart feels stirred to do more, to donate, to plant a seed back into the flow that feeds, you know this: it's not pressure, it's participation. It's the same principle you've been living all along. Obedience born of love, not obligation. Picture it like this: you stand beside a vast river of light. When you pour even one drop of water into it, you don't lose, you widen its flow. Your donation is a drop that becomes a current, carrying hope to shores you may never see. Your generosity is not payment, it's praise in motion. It says, I recognize the light that strengthened me, and I want it to reach others. Heaven sees that motion. God smiles upon that willingness. You are part of a movement, God's chosen ones rising, funded by heaven, bound by purpose, sustained by faith. Every act of support, your prayers, your words, your shares add strength to the mission. When you engage, you don't just receive blessing, you become blessing. Imagine a lighthouse on a stormy shore. Its light doesn't belong to one ship, it belongs to all who sail in darkness. But that light only shines because someone keeps the oil burning. When you give, you are adding oil to that flame. You keep the message alive for those still lost in fog. So, if this message has strengthened you, like this message, so others can find it. Share it to let the flow of faith multiply. Subscribe if you haven't. Not for routine, but to stay connected to a space where heaven still speaks. And if that quiet voice inside whispers to you to donate, follow it. That whisper isn't manipulation, it's multiplication. Every drop you release returns as rain somewhere else in your story. You are not giving to a person, you are giving through a purpose. You are fueling what fuels you. That is the divine economy of obedience, never forced, never empty, always fruitful. Chosen one. Your life is proof that obedience still pays, faith still works, and generosity still multiplies. You are walking evidence that heaven funds what it forms. Keep your heart open, your hands willing, and your faith steady. The river of provision hasn't stopped, it's only widening through you. And as the river widens, so does your reach. Every act of faith extends the light, turning obedience into overflow. There are moments in the life of a chosen one when heaven performs an invisible transaction. You give obedience, and in return, God releases a kind of currency that no earthly system can imitate. It may not always come as money, it comes as timing, favor, and peace. The invisible begins to move around you, rearranging the visible world in your favor. Your obedience was never a donation, it was an investment. And heaven never allows an investment made in love to remain silent forever. The spiritual currency you've sown through surrender is now converting into tangible blessing, not because of striving, but because you aligned yourself with divine order. The apostle reminds us in his letter to the Corinthians, 2nd book, chapter 9, verse 8, and God is able to bless you abundantly, so that in all things, at all times, having all that you need, you will abound in every good work. Oh, you've entered the stage where invisible obedience becomes visible evidence. This is not imagination, it's fulfillment. What you carried in prayer is now manifesting as provision, Heaven funds what heaven designs. And you, chosen one, are heaven's design in motion. There was a young man named Elias who obeyed God's call to build a small workshop for repairing bicycles for children in his village. E had no capital, no support, just conviction, while others laughed. He built anyway. He borrowed old tools, worked under the sun, and prayed over every wheel he fixed. People mocked his small beginning, but his obedience was currency in heaven. Months later, an organization visited his village, searching for community projects to support. They saw his integrity and the joy in the children's eyes. Within weeks, they funded his workshop, completely supplies, rent, salaries for his helpers. What began as obedience turned into overflow. Elias didn't chase money, he chased meaning, and heaven sponsored the rest. So it is with you. Every instruction you followed without understanding, every delay you've endured without bitterness, has been a spiritual transaction waiting for divine release. You are not begging for breakthrough, you are stepping into what's already yours. The beauty of divine currency is that it flows through trust. When God can trust you to obey with little, He funds you with much. This funding doesn't always appear as wealth. It often shows up as access, ideas, and divine introductions. You'll begin meeting the right people at the right time, entering rooms. Your name has been whispered in long before you arrive. Chosen one. Obedience has a sound. It vibrates through heaven like a note of faith. And that sound summons resources. Angels are drawn to it. Provision moves toward it. Even creation responds to it. That's why your obedience matters. It resonates across realms. Think of it as a sacred exchange rate. Each time you choose faith over fear, the rate increases. Each time you obey without needing explanation, the deposit deepens. The economy of heaven doesn't depend on markets, it depends on trust. And you, chosen one, have proven trustworthy. Now heaven releases its response. Peace where there was pressure, provision where there was drought, clarity where there was confusion. This is the manifestation of your spiritual currency being exchanged for tangible blessing. As you take in these words, something in your spirit already knows it's happening. What was delayed is now moving. Doors aren't opening randomly. They're responding to your obedience. You're not chasing. You're attracting what your yes deserves. Let this moment become your personal confirmation that divine order is unfolding. The spiritual funds are being transferred. You have waited, sown, trusted, and endured, and now the account of heaven releases in your direction. To seal this moment of faith, leave a prophetic mark below. Comment 770. The number 777 is not superstition. It's a symbol of completion and divine perfection. It represents the full cycle of promise, what was spoken, tested, and now fulfilled. When you type it, don't treat it as numbers on a screen. See it as a declaration of alignment. God's perfect timing is now at work in my life. Each 7 speaks something profound. First, 7 for obedience. Second, 7 for endurance. Third, 7 for reward. Together they mean heaven's work in you is both finished and fruitful. You're not typing digits. You're building a memorial. Heaven reads your declaration as agreement, that you trust the process that you receive the provision, and that you will use it for purpose. Chosen one. Rest assured, what you have been waiting for is already unfolding, piece by piece, layer by layer. Your obedience has translated into open gates, and those gates will not close again. The divine exchange has begun. The spiritual currency you've carried has matured. The bank of heaven has released your inheritance. Now, walk in it with gratitude, peace, and faith. You are fully funded by heaven, complete, covered, and called. When obedience is misunderstood, it often becomes the heaviest crown a chosen one can wear. You remember those moments, don't you? When you obeyed and were met not with applause, but with mockery. When you followed God's whisper, and the very people who once walked beside you questioned your sanity. Those were not random trials, they were divine filters. Heaven used misunderstanding to separate you from what could not go with you. There's a hidden cost to obedience that few talk about: the loneliness of being right too soon. You saw what others couldn't. You felt what others ignored. And you moved when others stood still. It wasn't arrogance, it was assignment. Yet in the moment, it hurt deeply. Reaction felt like punishment, when in truth, it was redirection. The Spirit spoke through the prophet Jeremiah. Chapter 20, verse 9. But if I say, I will not mention his word or speak any more in his name, his word is in my heart like a fire shut up in my bones. I am weary of holding it in. Indeed, I cannot. O Dele, you know that fire, it's the holy unrest that doesn't let you fit where you once belonged. It's what kept you moving when comfort called you to stop. That fire is obedience, embodied a flame. Heaven lights in the bones of its chosen. And when that flame burns, no ridicule can quench it. There was once a woman named Nael, quiet but steady. She worked at a company where ethics were treated as optional. When asked to lie to clients, she refused again and again. Her co-workers called her naive. Her boss demoted her. She went home that night weeping, asking God why obedience had cost her stability. Weeks later, the company faced legal collapse, and Nael was called to testify. Her integrity became her promotion. Her quiet refusal positioned her for leadership when everything else crumbled. That's how divine order works. God uses seasons of mockery to prove authenticity. He allows misunderstanding to polish the edges of purpose. Every cruel word spoken against you became a hammer shaping your faith. Every door slammed shut redirected your steps to the one that could actually hold your destiny. You weren't losing when they left, you were being refined. The very people who laughed at your faith will one day look at your life as evidence that obedience still works. God doesn't shame those who trust Him, He showcases them. It's important to understand that divine funding doesn't arrive only in the form of resources. It also comes as restoration of reputation. God is not just repaying what you lost materially, He's rewriting how your story is remembered. Those who mocked will see that your obedience wasn't weakness, but wisdom. There's a sacred strength in learning to walk through ridicule without losing reverence. It means you've reached a depth where opinions can't shake conviction. It means heaven can now trust you with public favor because you've proven faithful in private fire. Even Jesus experienced this pattern. He obeyed unto death. And before the resurrection came, there was ridicule. Soldiers mocked Him. Crowds jeered. Silence surrounded. Yet in that silence, heaven was still counting every moment of surrender as seed for glory. The same law applies to you. Your obedience may not yet be celebrated, but it is not unseen. In the archives of heaven, your name carries the fragrance of endurance. You didn't curse the darkness, you held your light higher, and because of that, God is preparing to honor you openly. Remember, the mockers served their purpose. They confirmed your authenticity. Without them, you might have settled for fitting in. Instead, their rejection pushed you closer to God's embrace. They unknowingly became midwives to your calling. So now, when memory replays those hurtful words, let peace replace pain. You no longer owe explanations to those who could not hear heaven's voice in your obedience. The time for proving is over. The time for revealing is near. Every trial, every misunderstanding, every night you questioned your sanity for obeying, heaven counted it all as gold. You didn't just survive misunderstanding, you were purified through it. And in the stillness that follows vindication, you will notice something miraculous. Your heart holds no bitterness, only gratitude, because now you see clearly those who mocked your faith only proved how real it was. Chosen one, you are not who you were when the mocking began. You are stronger, softer, wiser. The scars of misunderstanding have become the markings of maturity. Heaven doesn't just bless you for obeying, it trusts you because you endured misunderstanding without losing mercy. The fire in your bones still burns, but it no longer hurts. It illuminates. The same faith that set you apart is now the same light that will draw others to hope again. There comes a moment when the sky that once felt closed begins to open, not because you knocked harder, but because your obedience finally reached heaven's appointed season. The delay was never denial, it was design. Every quiet act of trust was a seed buried deep. And now the clouds are heavy with your rain. Provision doesn't appear out of nowhere. It responds to alignment. The heavens are not moved by emotion, they move by obedience. You have lived through this mystery without even realizing it. Every time you said, "Not my will, but yours," you aligned the locks of heaven's vaults. Now they turn effortlessly in your favor, according to what is written in the book of Hosea, chapter 10, verse 12. Sow righteousness for yourselves. Reap the fruit of unfailing love. And break up your unplowed ground, for it is time to seek the Lord, until he comes and showers his righteousness on you. May you have broken your unplowed ground through endurance. You've tilled the soil of your soul through tears and trust. That's why heaven now answers with rain. It is not ordinary rain, it is covenant rain. The kind that falls not just to water, but to awaken. Imagine a field that has been dry for years. Cracks running through the soil. Dust resting where dreams once grew. Then, without warning, clouds begin to gather. Thunder rolls softly, not in anger, but in announcement. The first drop falls, then another, until the land that was forgotten begins to drink again. That is your life right now. Heaven's downpour is arriving, drop by drop, promise by promise. It's strange, isn't it? How quietly God restores. There's no spectacle, no fireworks, just a gradual greening of what looked dead. The same areas of your life that were barren are now budding. Opportunities, relationships, and peace begin to return. Not because you chased them, but because obedience calls them home. You might not see the full harvest yet, but pay attention to the signs. The air feels different. The heaviness that once lingered is lifting. The timing of conversations, the sudden favor, the ease in once difficult spaces, these are not coincidences. They are early drops of the downpour. There's a story of an old farmer named Jonah who refused to abandon his cracked fields. Every year, his neighbors mocked him for sowing seed into dust. They had moved on, built homes elsewhere, and left the land behind. But Jonah kept planting. God promised this ground will live again. He said, one spring, rain came after years of drought. The neighbors returned to find Jonah's fields green while theirs lay barren. The same ground they called hopeless had become holy. Jonah's persistence had aligned with heaven's timing. Your obedience has done the same. The dry soil of your patience is about to bloom. Heaven does not waste endurance. It rewards it with rain. But this rain is not for comfort, it's for cultivation. God is not just blessing you, He's entrusting you. The downpour is both answer and assignment. You'll notice that provision will come with responsibility, that open doors will require wisdom to steward. The same obedience that brought the rain must now guide you to manage it. Rain has rhythm. Too much, too soon can flood, too little can dry up again. So God releases it in measures, teaching you how to walk in balance. As the blessings begin to flow, remember, rain without roots leads to ruin. Stay grounded. Stay teachable. Let your heart remain soft. The way soil stays receptive after rain. And notice something deeper. Heaven doesn't rain on one field only. When God opens the heavens for the obedient, the atmosphere changes for everyone around them. Your obedience becomes an umbrella of favor that covers those connected to you. Family members, colleagues, even strangers will feel the effect of your alignment. That's how heaven works. It multiplies through contact. The rain that's falling on your life carries more than moisture. It carries mercy. It restores, revives, and redeems. It brings color back to faded dreams and fragrance back to forgotten prayers. You are stepping into a season where heaven's provision won't be scarce. It will be steady. Chosen one. The windows of heaven are not rumors. They're open. The sound you've been hearing in your spirit is not imagination. It's the beginning of rain. Don't fear the thunder that comes with it. Thunder only announces the coming of showers. You sowed righteousness. You waited with endurance. And now, God is answering with abundance. Your field will not remain barren, for the rain has begun to fall. When the rain of heaven begins to fall, it doesn't just refresh, it awakens. You begin to see the fruits of what your obedience prepared. But now, a new responsibility emerges: stewardship. Abundance is not a reward, it is an invitation to manage with wisdom what God has released. Provision without purpose is wasted. But when the chosen one receives from heaven, every resource becomes sacred. Every opportunity, a vessel of divine intent. You are now walking into that delicate space where God watches how you handle what He has placed in your hands. As it is written in the book of Luke, chapter 16, verse 10, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. Whoever is dishonest with little will be dishonest with much." You prove trustworthy with little, faithful in delay, steadfast in obscurity, and now heaven increases your measure. But with the increase comes the test of stewardship. Will you use the blessings as building materials for purpose? or as decorations for pride. Think of the river that overflows after rain. It can either water the land or drown it, depending on the channels built to guide its flow. That's why God trains you before He blesses you, so you know how to direct the flow. Blessing unmanaged can become burden, but when obedience governs it, it becomes a continuous stream of impact. There was a man named Samuel who once prayed for financial provision to care for his aging father. God answered clients, multiplied, contracts expanded. Everything he touched prospered. But soon, the pressure of abundance tempted him toward excess. He forgot the altar that birthed his success. It wasn't until he paused, prayed, and returned to generosity that peace returned. The river flowed freely again when he remembered that provision is partnership, not possession. You will soon face the same choice, not between right and wrong, but between ownership and stewardship. The moment you remember that everything in your hand is borrowed from heaven, peace will protect your blessing. Abundance is never given to inflate ego, it's given to extend grace. You may notice new doors opening, ideas you never considered, people suddenly drawn to collaborate, unexpected help arriving. These aren't coincidences, they're divine signals. Each connection carries purpose, but discernment is key. Not every opportunity is heaven sent. Some are distractions dressed as favor. That's why your sensitivity to God's voice must remain sharp. Even in abundance, it's easier to trust God in famine than in overflow. Scarcity forces dependence, abundance tests loyalty. In plenty, gratitude must become your discipline. Every answered prayer must return as praise. Every harvest must point back to the sower. You will soon discover that stewardship is also spiritual warfare. When the enemy can't stop your blessing, he'll try to corrupt your management of it. Pride, haste, and distraction are his tools, but wisdom will keep you steady. Remember the law of the vineyard: fruit grows under care, not chaos. This is where your obedience deepens. Before, it was about saying yes to God's instructions. Now, it's about saying no to everything that dilutes your focus. Protection of purpose is as sacred as pursuit of purpose. When you learn to handle blessing with open hands, the flow continues. Closed fists trap provision, open palms invite multiplication. Heaven trusts what it can flow through, not just what it can pour into. Chosen one, this is your next assignment: to master balance, to hold blessing without idolizing it, to celebrate increase without worshipping it. The goal was never wealth itself. It was to prove that wealth could serve worship. You have become like a lamp filled with oil, glowing not because of power, but because of purpose. Every drop of favor, every opportunity, every connection is oil, sacred, intentional, temporary. Use it to light others, not to boast of brightness. So now, take a quiet moment and affirm your position. Let heaven hear your agreement that you are ready to steward wisely. Comment: I remain faithful. This isn't ritual, it's a declaration. When you write those words, you're telling heaven that success will not silence your surrender. You're telling the spiritual realm that abundance will not make you forget the altar. You're declaring that you are not merely blessed, you are trusted. The rain fell, the river rose, and now the flow is in your hands. Steward it with grace, and heaven will continue to refill your cup until it overflows with purpose. Not pride, Every miracle you manage with humility becomes an invitation for more. The moment you treat provision as purpose, heaven multiplies it. Faithfulness in this season is not about gaining, it's about guarding what God entrusts. So your abundance remains pure and eternal in impact. There comes a sacred point in your journey. Chosen one. When the provision of heaven stops feeling like surprise and starts feeling like rhythm, it's as if every step you take lands perfectly on divine timing. Every breath draws in purpose, and every resource arrives exactly when it should. That's not coincidence, it's covenant. According to what is written in the book of Haggai, chapter 2, verse 8, "The silver is mine, and the gold is mine, declares the Lord Almighty." That truth reshapes everything you think you own. The resources in your life were never random, they are on loan from the King himself. And now, God is teaching you how to walk as a steward of his abundance, not a collector of your own. Think of yourself as a gardener in heaven's field. The seeds weren't yours to begin with, yet they were placed in your hand. You plant them, water them, nurture them, and when the garden blooms, you stand amazed, not because you made it grow, but because you were trusted to hold the soil. That's the heart of divine funding, partnership, not possession. Every door that opened, every favor that found you, every opportunity that quietly arrived, it all carries God's fingerprint. He has written his generosity into your story. And now he invites you to join him in writing generosity into others. When you like, share, or subscribe, you're not just supporting a message, you're building an echo. Every click, every share, every comment becomes a small seed carried by the wind of the Spirit to reach someone else's wilderness. You become the invisible hand that pushes light into dark corners. And if your heart ever whispers to give, to donate, to pour back into the same stream that has poured into, you know that this is not a transaction, it's transformation. Giving is the art of keeping the river alive. It's how heaven's water never stagnates, it flows, nourishes, and circles back in unexpected ways. Picture a lantern glowing in a dark forest. Each message here is a lantern, each story a spark. But for the lantern to keep shining, someone has to refill the oil. That's what your giving does. It adds oil to light that helps other souls see the path ahead. The more hands that pour, the brighter the forest becomes. You're not pressured to give, you're invited to participate. The miracle is that in giving, you never lose you. Circulate grace. The light that leaves your hand returns, multiplied. Once there was a woman named Selah who listened to messages like this during her hardest nights. She was living on very little. Yet one evening, she felt a quiet pull to give a small donation. "It's not much," she whispered, "but it's love." That same week, someone anonymously paid her overdue bills. Selah didn't buy a miracle, she aligned with one. Because giving always keeps you aligned with heaven's rhythm. You see, the purpose of this space, the reason every word, every section, every heartbeat exists, is to remind you of who you are. Chosen, funded, and favored. When you engage, you're not fueling a brand, you're feeding a calling. So if this message speaks to you, if it stirs something deep and holy within, like it, so the algorithm of light outruns the noise. Share it, so a tired soul scrolling in silence can remember hope still exists. Subscribe, not as a routine, but as a declaration that you want to stay connected to what heaven is saying, and if generosity rises in your spirit, let it flow freely. To donate is to return oil to the flame that has guided you. You're not compelled, you're invited. It's a beautiful partnership between gratitude and grace, because every seed of light you plant here finds its way back to you in harvests of peace. Every act of giving echoes in eternity. You're not funding words, you're fueling transformation. Chosen one. Remember this, the silver belongs to God, and so does the story. He's writing through you. What you hold now was entrusted to you not to hoard, but to circulate. The flow of generosity keeps heaven's current alive on earth. So, stand where you are for a moment. Feel that quiet pull in your spirit, not a command, but an invitation. The same God who provided for you now invites you to keep the stream flowing, because when you pour, He refills. When you give, He multiplies. When you partner with His purpose, you become part of His provision. Your obedience began this journey. Your generosity sustains it. And together, we keep the light burning for the next soul, still wandering in the dark. When heaven funds your obedience, it does more than meet needs, it reshapes identity. You begin to see yourself not as one merely surviving divine plans, but as one partnering with them. The evidence of that partnership shows up quietly, in peace that makes no sense, in strength that surprises even you, in the calm assurance that you're exactly where you're meant to be. Faith has matured in you. It's no longer the trembling trust that once asked, "Will God come through?" Now it's the steady knowing that He already has. Every challenge behind you was not meant to break your spirit. It was meant to build your spiritual authority. The obedience that once felt like loss has now become language between you and heaven. We are reminded through the writings of David in the Psalms, chapter 37, verse 5, "Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act." That word commit holds weight. It's not passive. It means to roll your entire life upon the shoulders of God and keep walking. That's what you've done. Even without realizing it, you've kept moving under the weight of uncertainty, trusting that your steps mattered even when the path didn't make sense. And now, heaven begins to act on your behalf. The stage you thought was silent was actually a construction zone, blueprints of blessing being drawn while you waited outside the door. You weren't forgotten, you were being factored in. The divine hand that withheld certain things wasn't punishing you, it was protecting you. Some doors didn't open because the floor behind them wasn't finished yet. Some people drifted away because they couldn't handle the next version of your calling. And some prayers seemed unanswered because God was building an answer bigger than what you could have framed in words. There was a man named Ezra, a craftsman who built intricate wooden instruments. During a season of loss, he stopped hearing music altogether. His hands still knew how to carve, but his heart had gone silent. He thought his purpose had ended, but months later, he found himself crafting a harp for a community choir, a gift of obedience. Though he no longer played himself, on the day of its unveiling, a little girl touched its strings, and a melody filled the hall. Ezra wept. He realized the sound had never died. It had simply moved through his obedience into another generation. That's what God is doing through you. Your obedience has sound echoing beyond you, awakening blessings in others you may never meet. You don't have to see the entire ripple to trust the wave is moving. And even now, New dimensions of favor are unfolding. It's not just about provision, it's about placement. Heaven is positioning you where your influence will multiply effortlessly. You'll find yourself in conversations that matter, projects that align, environments that feel tailor-made for your gifts. This is not coincidence, it's consequence. Obedience always leads to divine orchestration. Yet with this new season comes an old reminder: never lose the simplicity of trust. When miracles become familiar, remember the days when all you had was faith. Gratitude must remain your anchor, or abundance will drift into entitlement. The purest heart still whispers, "I remember when I prayed for this." Oh, chosen one. The evidence of God's hand in your life will soon become undeniable. You'll notice it in the way problems begin to solve themselves, how strength meets you exactly where weakness once lived, how what once terrified you now trains you. You are no longer just walking with God, you're walking as one who knows His rhythm. And here's the quiet miracle: you don't even have to strive anymore. The grace that carried you through waiting now carries you through winning. It's effortless alignment, the kind that doesn't require performance, only presence. You've reached a place where obedience has become instinct, and heaven responds to it like music to memory. This is the rhythm of divine partnership. You move in trust, and heaven moves in timing. The two meet, and miracles become natural. You no longer question whether you're chosen, you live like it. Every breath, every step, every choice is now an act of worship. So rest in this: heaven is acting. Even now, what you once prayed for in weakness, you'll soon walk in with strength. What you once hoped for in tears, you'll now carry in peace. The life you live has become proof that obedience never ends in emptiness, it ends in evidence. You no longer chase confirmation, you are confirmation. Every breath you take declares God keeps His promises, and your life itself has become the testimony heaven always intended to display. The rhythm of heaven is constant, it doesn't rush, and it never forgets. You've walked through seasons of silence, endured misunderstanding, and now you stand in the threshold of overflow. This isn't just about receiving more, it's about stepping into maturity, the kind of maturity that no longer fears waiting, because waiting has become worship. The book of Romans, chapter 8, verse 28, declares, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." This verse is not a comfort for the weak, it's a banner for the tested. It means that every piece of your story, even the painful ones, was necessary for the pattern of your promise. The moments you thought were detours were actually divine directions, leading you right where you needed to be. Think of a tapestry being woven from the back. It looks messy, threads tangled, colors clashing, patterns unclear. But turn it around, and suddenly, every line has meaning. That's your life. Heaven has been weaving through your obedience, your losses, your waiting, and now the design is beginning to show. What once looked random is now radiant. You may not have understood why certain things were taken, but look closer. Loss was not subtraction, it was preparation. God never removes without replacing. He simply trades the temporary for the timeless. The doors that shut behind you were protection, not punishment. You've entered a divine exchange, pain for purpose, endurance for elevation. Obedience for overflow. The time you spent in the valley wasn't wasted. It was the classroom where heaven taught you language for leadership. Because true authority is born in humility. There's a story of a man named Aaron who waited 9 long years for a promise to manifest. He had been told to build an education center for underprivileged children, but every attempt failed. Funds dried up. Support vanished. Yet he kept showing up, cleaning an empty building, praying over desks that no children yet filled. One morning, a retired teacher stopped by, curious about his persistence. Within weeks, word spread, and donations began to arrive. A school was born not because of money, but because of one man's consistent yes. That's the power of divine rhythm. When you stay faithful, heaven aligns the tempo of blessing to the beat of your endurance. What feels like delay is heaven matching your capacity. And now, your capacity has expanded. You are ready for the weight of blessing that's about to pour. But remember, overflow isn't the end. It's the assignment. The more God gives, the more you're called to give back. Not out of duty, but as a natural response of gratitude. Look around your life. The signs are subtle but sure. The unexpected favor, the peace that doesn't make sense, the opportunities that fit like puzzle pieces, all whispering the same truth: heaven is near. And your obedience is being funded in full. Still, this is the moment to guard your heart, because new seasons come with new distractions. The enemy cannot steal what God gives, but he can attempt to distort how you see it. Pride, comparison, and haste are the shadows that try to follow light. Stay grounded, stay kind, stay teachable. Your assignment is not to chase abundance, but to channel it. Be like a river that doesn't hold water for itself, but flows outward to nourish what surrounds it. When you live that way, heaven keeps your current strong. Chosen one. You're walking into a rhythm where miracles will feel ordinary, not because they've lost power, but because you've learned the language of faith. You will speak what heaven speaks. Move when heaven moves. And rest when heaven rests. That's divine synchronization. You may not see the full picture, but your spirit feels it. The internal weight has lifted. The storms have subsided. The horizon is clearing, and peace stands where pressure once lived. This is what divine order feels like: steady, sure, sacred. To mark this moment of alignment, leave a prophetic symbol below. Comment 222. The number 222 signifies divine partnership and balance between heaven and earth. It represents the confirmation that what was promised is now unfolding in harmony. When you write it, you're not typing numbers, you're declaring, I walk in divine agreement. Each 2 speaks something powerful. The first for trust, the second for timing, the third for testimony. Together they mean heaven's will and your obedience are now perfectly intertwined. So as you type 222, let it be a whisper of gratitude, a personal covenant between you and the one who never forgot your seed. You have waited, you have obeyed, and now the tapestry of your journey reveals its masterpiece. The rhythm of heaven is playing your song, and everything in your life is finally in tune. The more heaven unfolds, the clearer you see that obedience was never about achieving something, it was about becoming someone. You've changed in ways even you can't fully describe. The restlessness that once drove you has quieted into rhythm. The questions that once kept you awake have turned into quiet assurance. You've discovered that peace is not the absence of struggle, it's the presence of God in every step. You stand now in a space between what was promised and what's being revealed. It's a sacred middle ground where faith matures. Here, God teaches you not just how to receive blessing, but how to carry it. Because blessing, if mishandled, can break a soul as easily as burden once did. Heaven speaks clearly through the words in the book of James. Chapter 1, verse 4. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Those words are not gentle. They are forging words. They mean that waiting, obeying, enduring it all has a purpose: to make you whole. God isn't just filling your hands, He's finishing your heart. There's something sacred about maturity that only the tested understand. It's not loud. It doesn't need to prove anything. It's like a mountain that's been shaped by wind and storm, yet stands unmoved because it knows who it is. That's what obedience has carved into you: stability. Sometimes, heaven delays the blessing because it's still perfecting the vessel. You can't pour heavy glory into fragile glass. The years that felt like delay were actually strengthening. Every disappointment fortified your discernment. Every waiting season deepened your roots. You've become unshakable, not because life became easy, but because you learned to bend without breaking. There was a woman named Adira who prayed for years for her art to reach others. She painted quietly, never noticed, never applauded. People told her to move on, find something practical, but she couldn't stop. "This is my worship," she said. Then, one night, a small local gallery owner stumbled upon her work online. Within weeks, her paintings were displayed, touching hundreds who said her art felt alive. Adira wept, not because she was finally seen, but because the waiting had refined her heart enough to handle being seen. You too are entering that kind of unveiling. The time of proving is closing, and the time of purpose is beginning. Heaven doesn't just release blessings, it releases them when your heart can carry them without losing humility. Notice how your desires have changed. What you once prayed for with desperation, you now hold with open hands. You no longer ask God to give, just to have you ask Him to give so you can serve. That shift is proof of growth. Obedience has matured into stewardship. In this new space, you'll feel an unfamiliar calm. Opportunities may rise quickly, but you won't rush. You've learned that anything that demands haste isn't holy. You'll find yourself saying no more often, not out of fear, but from clarity. What used to feel like rejection will now feel like redirection. And though the world may see you as strong, heaven knows it's not strength alone that sustains you, it's surrender. You've stopped striving for control and started trusting the current. That's when grace flows best through hands that no longer grasp. This season is not about chasing manifestations, it's about maintaining maturity. The favor that's arriving isn't fragile, it's fortified by your history with God. That's why you can stand in abundance and not be moved by applause. You've learned that applause fades, but purpose doesn't. What's coming next will not surprise you, it will fit you, like a garment tailored by heaven itself. Each thread sewn from your obedience, each fold shaped by your faith. You won't have to force the next chapter, it will unfold naturally, as if written long before you breathed. Chosen one, your perseverance has finished its work. The pieces that once felt scattered now form a complete picture. You've become the vessel God always intended, strong, steady, and ready to carry weight without pride. And here is the quiet miracle. Heaven's greatest blessings no longer feel distant. They feel near because they've already begun to grow inside you. Maturity is not waiting for something outside to change. It's realizing the change has already happened within. You are not who you were when the journey began. The cracks have become patterns of grace. The waiting has turned into wisdom. The struggle has become strength. You've reached the place where obedience and peace finally meet, and from here, every step will flow with quiet authority. Every story that heaven writes has a turning point, the moment when what was once unseen becomes undeniable. You have arrived there. The divine reversal has begun. It doesn't come with noise or spectacle, but with quiet precision. You can feel it even now, the subtle shifting of circumstances, the sense that things are falling into place without your striving. That's not luck. It's divine timing, finally catching up with your obedience. The prophet Nahum wrote in the book, bearing his name, chapter 1, verse 7, "The Lord is good, a refuge in times of trouble. He cares for those who trust in him." Then, those words describe your journey perfectly. Through every storm, you didn't just survive, you were being sheltered. The hands that covered you during the trial are now revealing what they've been building behind the curtain. God never wastes protection. He transforms it into promotion. The law of divine reversal is this: what the enemy intended for delay, heaven uses for acceleration. The very places where you felt bound will become the stages of your breakthrough. The same ground that saw your tears will soon echo with your laughter. You've walked long enough to know that divine justice doesn't rush. It works like sunrise. Darkness never truly wins, it just runs out of time. And when light appears, it doesn't argue with the night, it simply replaces it. That's what is happening around you. The light of fulfillment is replacing the shadows of frustration. There's a story told about a man named Silas, who lost everything when his small business collapsed. He had worked for years, only to see it fall apart in one brutal season. But instead of bitterness, he began to pray for the ones who betrayed him. Months later, one of his competitors reached out tired, broken, ready to retire, and offered Silas a partnership. The same door that rejection closed reopened as restoration. That's divine reversal. The beauty of reversal is that it doesn't just restore what was lost, it redefines it. What comes back is always greater than what left. God doesn't do replacements, he does resurrections. When he gives something back, it carries new strength, new meaning, and new favor. You've seen glimpses of this already. The people who once underestimated you now observe quietly from a distance. The same environments that once ignored your effort are now echoing your influence. You don't need to gloat. Heaven does the vindicating for you. This is the justice of God, not vengeance, but validation. And though the unfolding may feel slow, it is deliberate. Divine reversal is like the turning of a massive ship. It happens gradually. Then all at once, suddenly the wind changes direction. The very things that resisted you now begin to propel you forward. What was working against you starts to work for you. You might notice new peace settling over areas that once caused pain. It's not indifference, it's healing. You no longer crave explanations because you understand redemption. What once broke you now builds you. You've stepped into the sacred paradox where loss becomes legacy. Even your failures have become foundations. Every no you encountered trained your discernment. Every detour built your endurance. Every fall taught you how to rise with grace. Heaven wastes nothing. It rewrites everything. The people who once walked away may never return, but you'll find yourself thanking God they didn't. Their absence created space for divine appointment. The things you thought you needed were only scaffolding. The real structure was being built within. And soon, the results will be visible. There will be moments when provision seems to appear from nowhere. Connections form effortlessly, and opportunities align perfectly. That's not coincidence, it's compensation. God doesn't just restore time, He redeems it. The years that felt stolen will now return, multiplied in purpose and peace. Chosen one. Reversal doesn't mean revenge. It means redemption on a level the human mind cannot plan. It means peace replacing pain, clarity replacing confusion, and joy replacing judgment. It's heaven saying, "You've passed the test now, watch me rewrite the story." Lol, you no longer need to chase closure. God is giving you conclusion. What was meant to end in loss will now end in legacy. You will look back and realize the breaking was the birthing. The detour was the direction. The silence was the setup. The divine reversal is not coming, it's here. Slowly, gently, certainly. Every thread of your story is being rewoven into glory. And soon, what you endured will become evidence not of your strength, but of His faithfulness. There comes a time when the journey itself becomes the testimony, when your story no longer feels like survival, but like song. You've walked through fire and rain, and now you stand radiant. Not because the road was smooth, but because grace carried you when strength could not. The glow you carry isn't pride, it's peace. It's what happens when obedience matures into overflow. We find it written in the book of Hebrews, chapter 10, verse 35. So do not throw away your confidence. It will be richly rewarded. You've kept your confidence through every storm. Even when the winds howled, you didn't drop your faith. Heaven noticed that confidence is not arrogance, it's trust that refuses to quit. And now, that trust is calling forth reward. You may not realize it, but you've become a living altar. Every act of kindness, every moment you chose compassion over criticism, every time you spoke life instead of fear, it all rose as incense before heaven. The fragrance of your faith has filled the air around you, and heaven responds to that aroma with increase. What's being released over you now isn't random, it's relational. The God who watched you kneel in silence is now raising you in favor. Doors that once refused to open now swing wide. Not because you knocked harder, but because your faith has been recognized in the courts of heaven. And as this unfolding continues, the message you're hearing, this voice, these words, they exist for a single purpose: to remind you that you were never walking alone. Every sentence crafted here is meant to mirror the heartbeat of heaven for your life. When you like this message, you're not just pressing a button, you're adding another flame to the circle of light. Somewhere, another weary soul will see it flicker and know they're not alone. When you share, it's like casting seeds into unseen soil. You never know which heart they'll land in, but every seed carries hope. Each share is a prayer in motion. When you subscribe, you're building a small sanctuary of continuity, a place where heaven can keep finding you week after week. It's how you whisper, I'm still listening. And if your heart ever feels led to donate, imagine pouring oil into a lantern that's guided you through the night. Your generosity becomes the light for someone else's dawn. No demand, no duty, only delight, the beautiful choice of the willing. But don't stop there. Leave a comment below, write a word, a thought, even a single thank you. Think of it as dropping a pebble into the river of gratitude. Each ripple reaches farther than you can see. Your words might be the wave that touches another soul's shore. There was once a woman named Amira who said she had no great gift to offer, only gratitude. She began supporting messages like this quietly, without fanfare. Years later, she met a stranger who told her, "Your kindness kept me alive." She realized her small act had grown into someone else's miracle. That's how divine economy works. The giver never loses, and the receiver never forgets. Chosen one. You're part of that sacred exchange. Every time you engage, you strengthen the circle of light. The message that once found you will now find others through you. So as you sit with these words, let gratitude be your compass. Like this message as recognition, share it as love. Subscribe so the next whisper of heaven finds you again. Comment to keep the river flowing. And donate if your heart feels moved, to keep the oil burning for those still finding their way home. Because this isn't about sustaining words, it's about sustaining wonder. The movement of faith, the flow of light, the gentle revolution of hearts awakened. Heaven smiles upon your yes, every one of them, seen and unseen. And through that, yes, the world becomes brighter, one obedient soul at a time. The beauty of divine generosity is that it never circles back empty. Every act of giving your word, your time, your kindness returns, carrying something multiplied. That's the unseen rhythm of heaven. Whatever you release in faith finds its way home with blessing attached. And when you least expect it, you'll recognize the return, a conversation that heals, a door that opens effortlessly, a peace that settles like sunlight through clouds. It won't feel like reward. It will feel like recognition. Heaven always acknowledges the hearts that mirror its nature. So keep walking in this flow. Let gratitude guide your motion and compassion steady your hands. The light you've nurtured now lives in others. And that, chosen one, is the true definition of legacy. The vision God placed within you was never meant to stay small. What began as a whisper in your spirit has grown into something vast, something living. The obedience that once felt personal is now becoming generational. Heaven never funds a single moment, it funds a movement. And now, that movement is taking form through you. Your life is expanding, not because you chased influence, but because you carried integrity. The same yes that once seemed to cost everything is now multiplying into impact you couldn't have imagined. The reach of your obedience extends farther than your eyes can see, like ripples traveling across a still lake, as it was declared in the book of Micah, chapter 7, verse 8. Though I have fallen, I will rise. Though I sit in darkness, the Lord will be my light. That is the sound of your spirit now rising. Radiant, resilient. The falls you endured were never final, they were foundations. Each stumble became instruction. Each failure became fertilizer for what now flourishes. The darkness you sat in was not punishment. It was the womb where wisdom was born. You may notice it already. the ideas coming faster, the doors opening smoother, the sense of clarity replacing confusion. You're not striving anymore, you're flowing. The same spirit that once sustained you in scarcity now sustains you in stewardship. What you build in this season will not fade because it's rooted in faith, not fame. There was a man named Leo who used to deliver bread from a small truck in his town. For years, he dreamed of building a bakery that would employ those who had nothing. He prayed, waited, worked quietly. Then, one morning, a stranger visited his shop, someone who had tasted his bread by chance and wanted to invest. Within a year, Leo's bakery became a place of refuge and community. When asked how it happened, he smiled and said, "God didn't just fund my business, He funded my burden." Oh, that's how divine vision works. God doesn't bless ideas for comfort. He blesses burdens that carry compassion. What you feel stirring within isn't ambition, it's assignment. Heaven funds what heals others, not what glorifies self. And now, the vision entrusted to you is widening. What once required faith to start will now require wisdom to sustain. Expansion de mon structure. You're no longer building for survival, you're building for succession. The blessings arriving are not only for you, but for those who will come after you. Remember, abundance is never meant to end with the obedient, it's meant to flow through them. Like a river, your provision gains power only when it moves. Stagnant water spoils, but flowing water nourishes. Your role now is to guide that current toward purpose, to let generosity, mentorship, and creativity become channels of divine expansion. You'll begin to notice people drawn to your light. Some will come to receive, others to learn. Don't resist it. This is part of your new assignment. You are becoming a source, not because you're better, but because you've been faithful. And when heaven finds faithfulness, it entrusts responsibility. But in this expansion, stay small in heart. Humility will protect what favor cannot. The higher you rise, the deeper your roots must go. The secret to sustaining greatness is remembering gratitude. Every morning you wake up, whisper thankfulness like a shield. It will guard you from pride and preserve your peace. The vision expanding through you is not only changing your world, it's affecting the unseen. There are people you'll never meet whose lives will shift because you chose to build what God birthed in your spirit. The impact of obedience never stops at your doorstep. It travels like light, touching everything it passes. And yes, there will still be challenges. Every new level comes with new resistance. But the difference now is that you won't face it alone or afraid. You've been trained by trials and taught by trust. Courage has become your nature, not your effort. Chosen one. This is the era of fulfillment, not fragile beginnings, but fruitful expansion. You are stepping into your go season, where heaven no longer whispers but commands. Move forward. You've proven faithful in the small, and now God is entrusting you with the large. Walk in strength, lead with grace, build with vision. For what's unfolding now is not random success, it's divine succession. The same hand that lifted you from obscurity will sustain what you build for generations to come. And as you move forward, remember, every step you take plants a seed for someone else's courage. Your obedience becomes their permission to hope again. That's how heaven multiplies purpose, through the footsteps of the faithful. There is a stillness that comes after long obedience, a peace too deep to describe. You feel it now, don't you? The gentle calm that sits where chaos once lived. It's not the silence of emptiness, it's the silence of completion. The sound that heaven makes when a promise has been fulfilled. Everything that once felt scattered has aligned. Every unanswered question now carries quiet understanding. What was once heavy no longer weighs the same. You've walked through fire, through misunderstanding, through seasons that broke and built you. And now you stand, refined, steady, whole, as written in the book of Zephaniah, chapter 3, verse 17. The Lord your God is with you, the mighty warrior who saves. He will take great delight in you. In his love, he will no longer rebuke you, but will rejoice over you with singing. Oh, can you imagine that? Heaven singing over you, not because of perfection, but because of perseverance, because even when you didn't understand, you stayed, you obeyed, you trusted, and now, heaven celebrates what it already knew. You would finish the race marked for you. This is the season of crowning, not with jewels or thrones, but with peace. Peace is heaven's highest crown. It cannot be bought, borrowed, or imitated. It settles only on the heads of those who surrendered fully to the process. And now, it rests on you. You've become a vessel of evidence, living proof that obedience is never wasted. Every hardship, every loss, every tear has transformed into light within you. When people look at you now, they won't just see a survivor, they'll see a sign. The glow of divine endurance radiates from your life, and it will draw those still wandering in the dark. The story of your journey is sacred because it's not just yours, it belongs to heaven. Your life is the sermon that will preach long after your words fade. Every decision made in faith, every sacrifice unseen by the world, has become eternal testimony. The chosen ones don't simply receive miracles, they become them. There was a woman named Ray who spent years in anonymity, caring for children who weren't her own. She was never praised, never paid much, and yet she loved them fiercely. One day, years later, one of those children, now grown, returned to find her. He told her that her kindness had saved him from giving up on life. Ray didn't cry from surprise. She simply whispered, "So that's what the waiting was for." You too will have that moment when realization dawns that nothing was random. The waiting, the pain, the unanswered prayers, all of it was preparation for impact beyond yourself. The pieces fit now. The pattern is clear. Look at what God has done. You're not just restored, you're transformed. You carry wisdom you didn't have before, compassion you couldn't have learned from ease, and strength forged only in surrender. You no longer pray for escape, you pray for endurance to complete your assignment with excellence. This is the final stage of divine funding, not provision for things, but for purpose. Heaven now funds your influence, your peace, your ability to carry others as you were once carried. You have become a distributor of divine stability. The same grace that lifted you will flow through you. The crown you wear isn't about recognition, it's about responsibility. Peace is not passive, it's powerful. It steadies you so you can steady others. The calm you carry now will become shelter for many. The world doesn't need louder voices, it needs steadier hearts, and yours is one of them. Chosen one, The journey that began with a whisper now ends with a song. The same God who called you in secret is now revealing you in strength. But this unveiling isn't about spotlight, it's about legacy. Heaven funds obedience. Yes, but it multiplies surrender. You surrendered completely. And now your life is heaven's canvas. The sound of heaven's delight echoes quietly in your spirit. It's not applause, it's approval. The mighty warrior rejoices over you because you have finished what few were willing to begin. You obeyed when others doubted, stayed when others left, believed when evidence failed. And so, here you stand, crowned, calm, commissioned, not to start over, but to live from overflow. The testing has turned into testimony, and the promise has become presence. You don't have to strive anymore, you simply have to shine. This is what it means to be a chosen one, funded by heaven to walk in peace, lead in love, and live as proof that obedience always ends in glory. And when you rise tomorrow, carry this truth quietly within you. Obedience is never over, it simply changes form, becoming light that leads others toward their own awakening. And now, the story rests. The words have done their work. You've walked through revelation, fire, silence, and song. What was planted in obedience has blossomed in peace. Heaven's fingerprints are all over your journey, and your heart now carries the quiet authority of one who endured and became light. Before this message closes, pause, take a breath. Let gratitude rise softly within you. You've been nourished by the message. Now, let it flow outward to those still searching for the same peace. When you like this message, imagine it as placing one more candle on the altar of remembrance. Its glow whispering, God is still faithful. When you share, it's opening a window in someone else's night. You let the breeze of hope move through another soul's darkness. You'll never see all the lives your share touches, but heaven will. When you comment, don't just write words, plant them. Let your sentence be a seed of gratitude, a small prayer that says, I'm still standing, and I still believe. Each comment becomes a garden of remembrance where weary souls can rest their eyes and find strength. When you subscribe, you're not adding your name to a list, you're building a rhythm. A steady meeting place where divine words can keep finding you again and again. And if your heart stirs to donate, do it like pouring oil into a lamp that guided you through the night. You're not paying, you're participating. You're keeping the flame alive for others still walking home in the dark. Chosen one, this message may end, but the movement continues through your light, your love, and your willingness to keep the flame burning.